Good morning. Welcome to the July 23rd, 2024 board work session. It is now in order. Paul, roll call, please.
Ms. Wright?
Here.
Mr. Trent?
Here.
Ms. Jenkins?
Here.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Susan?
Here.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, welcome back, everyone. Summer's a little odd. I feel like I miss all of you guys, so welcome back. Dr. Rendell, will you address the board and let us know about the items that are on the agenda for today, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On today's agenda, we have the following topics. First, a public hearing for policy revisions for board review, then a budget update presentation by Mrs. Lisinski, and then a presentation on our climate survey data for school year 2024.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. So the first order of business today is on the agenda is the public hearing for policy revisions for board review. Let me pull up the policies real fast because this is, Mr. Gibbs, just to be correct, I need to state each policy and ask if anyone wishes to address this item twice, correctly? Yes. Correct? All right, thank you. All right, so the first policy that we have is policy 3242, professional learning. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Hearing none, is there any discussion from the board in regards to this item? No? All right. We are moving on to the next policy. All right, now we are on to policy 3362, which is the anti-harassment for our staff. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Seeing none. Board, I'm going to open this up for discussion. Any board member have anything to discuss on this policy? No? All right. I had one thing that was a little bit peculiar that I thought it looks as though it was copied and pasted directly from our student anti-harassment, and it doesn't really pertain to our staff as much. And so, board, I just really want to get your opinion on this. And it's on page, hang on. Let me get to it. I'll find it in a minute, sorry. I wrote it down in my notes. All right. Sorry, this is on, no, we're on 33. Yeah, sorry, 3262. I'm going back and forth between too many different things. It's in regards to this section. I think it's under the sanctions section, and it says something like the policy states that it would, sorry. It looks as though it's in regards to hindering an employee's educational outcome. It's literally copied and pasted from our student policy. I'm just trying to find it. Give me one second. Never did it. It doesn't really pertain. We're on 3362, anti-harassment. I know, we're all over the board this morning. It's okay.
I was reading our last email, sorry.
It's okay.
When you started. Oh, 10.
Am I on the right policy?
There's a sanctions section in 10.
In section 10? Okay.
Yeah, that's on page 12 of the file. Sorry.
No, this is
While
not.
you guys are figuring that out, I really appreciate the fact that there's stuff that that's protecting our staff and others that says that if people make false claims that they can be held accountable. I really appreciate that.
Where the heck is it? Now I'm not seeing it. And I was literally just here. I was in here working on this morning, and I'm. Okay, it's on page 6, on item B, under harassment, number 2, it says, has the effect of substantially interfering with an employee's educational performance, opportunities, or benefits. To me, that's more appropriate in the student portion of the anti-harassment, but it's not really pertaining so much to our staff. And so I just felt like it was probably copied and pasted because they're a similar policy, but board, what is your thoughts on that? Should that remain in place, or do you think that that's probably not the most appropriate placement for that line?
I wouldn't think you would take out the whole line. I mean, if you take out educational, then that you could say, substantially interfering with an employee's performance, opportunities, or benefits. I mean.
Perfect, yeah, that works.
But I mean, if we take that out right now, then we're starting all over.
No, I can advertise after the fact. It won't go into effect for 28 days, but.
Okay, so we can make
Oh,
that
that's interesting.
one edit.
That's a new development.
Okay, and still move forward.
Okay, all right, my vote would be to take out the word educational. That's a good compromise and still leaves the remainder of the sentence that's applicable to staff. So, board, are you in favor?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Did you find it? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was struggling to find it there for a minute. All right, now we are moving on to the next policy. Oh, I gotta, Paul, you've taught me this trick and I'm forgetting my ways, the little thing on the side there. Okay. We are on to Board Policy 5517.01, bullying and harassment for students. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Board, is there any discussion in regards to these changes or updates? Hearing none. All right. And the last one that we are on to is Board Policy 8405, School Safety and Security Threat Management Teams. Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Is there anyone present who wishes to address this item? Hearing none. Board, any discussion? No? All right. So I think we are good. We're going to move on to the next topic, which will be our budget update presentation from Ms. Lazinski and team.
Can I make a public service announcement? That Brevard Aftercare registration is now officially open.
Oh.
Starting at 9 a.m. this morning, so make sure you get on there and log on because some of our schools get closed up.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Rendell. This is the general fund update, and I also want to introduce Ms. Granhold, and she is my right-hand person, and if you guys want to go deep into any questions, she's the person to help. So to get started, so what is a budget? And I say this every time, but I think it's worth saying every time. A budget is a future-looking financial plan based on estimated revenues and estimated expenses for a specific amount of time. So, the key takeaway is we estimate what we think revenue is going to be. We estimate what we think the expenditures are going to be, and then they have to balance. But that is not money in the bank. We have to course correct, and there's fact of life changes. Revenue and expenditures can be impacted by the global economy. We have 2 wars right now, Eastern Europe and Middle East, critical to energy supply. So there's all kinds of things that could happen on the national stage, the state and local unknowns. So this is our best estimate as of today, and I really like Yoga Bear's quote where it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Board priorities. So the budget reflects your priorities, and that's what's most dear to the school board, clear understanding of focus areas and desired outcomes. An excellent education is job one. We have to meet each student where they are, touch their hearts before we can actually reach their minds. We have to ensure that we are incentivizing, supporting, and compensating our employees. We want the best employees possible in order to educate our students and run the school district as efficiently as possible. We have to maintain fiscal strength and protect the taxpayers' interests. And then, so here are some considerations that we also think through for the budget. And obviously, job one, the most important thing, the reason we're all here is student achievement. The budget is also impacted by legislative changes. It could be positive, or it could be, an unfunded mandate, uncertainty in enrollment. Are we going to stay flat, grow, those kind of things? Healthcare costs, Impact of inflation, ESSER funding we've had for several years now, and September 30th is the end, so making sure that we have a soft landing and not a cliff that we're going to have to figure out how we're going to cover these expenses. And then being responsible. We have to make sure that we are solvent and have a responsible fund balance, and that we have a good credit rating. So again, focus on student achievement, and I think everybody wins. We really looked at the budget really hard and scrubbed the different areas. What do we really need? And I have to say the cabinet members did an amazing job with looking at who they have, what authorizations they have, and then what they need, and making sure it's the most effective. They were able to reduce positions, but actually gain momentum and gain, what am I looking for? Gain, outcome. Thank you. And so, again, foster a culture of cost awareness is everything. We need to strengthen collaboration. We have to move away from, no, that's my budget, to what is the best for the school district and what is the best for the students in order to get an excellent education. And, we have to just take a look at the overall goal, and it's not anybody's budget, it's district's budget, it's the kids' budget to make sure that we educate them well. You've seen this slide quite a bit. This is the slide that shows the FTE growth, and I circled the 2021 year because that's when we were affected the most by the pandemic. You can see that we had a drop in enrollment. And I also want to make sure that you see that this is broken out by the district, charters, scholarship, and Bavard totals. So when you look at the FEFP, or when you look at what the state reports, you'll see the 82,000 number of students. But you have to remember that the district projecting 62,772 students with charters and scholarships. So you have to remember that when you're looking at the FEFP and when you're looking at the funding. And this is just a graphic to depict the information a different way. And what can be misleading is the voucher, the scholarship portion. So impact of HB1 1 year later, there wasn't a mass exodus like prior to the new legislation. And you can see that this is at a state level, 78% of the scholarships distributed were for students already attending private school. So so the majority of students taking scholarships are already in private school and would not have come into our district. 12% of the scholarships were distributed for students entering private school in kindergarten. Now that one's a little bit, would they have gone to public school or would they have gone to private school in kindergarten? That one's a little bit, no really way to say that which way it would have gone, but we know a lot of students would have gone to kindergarten private schools. And then 10% of scholarships distributed for the students from public charter schools transferring to private schools. So that's 10% of the total amount of scholarships, not 10% of our FTE, because sometimes that gets a little bit confusing. And then if a student previously attended public charter, money follows that student. And if the student already is enrolled in a private school, the voucher is a new cost to the state. So are there any questions on that one? Sometimes that causes a little confusion.
I don't have a question, but I just want to, thank you for pointing that out, because I think that, especially in the COVID year when the vouchers were all starting to expand. But I mean, even if we just look, I know you said that state level, but even if you just, I'm not going to run the percentages of my brain because I'm not that smart. But even if I just look at our biggest increase of the scholarships when going from 22-23 to 23-24, there was an increase of about 2,000 students taking scholarships, but yet our enrollment drop was less than 500. So, I mean, that just, you know, it's, some of those could have gone to other places because there was also an increase in charter. But so that just kind of shows that even in Brevard, it bears out, you know, the majority of the people in Brevard who took those scholarships absolutely were not already in our system, because we didn't get that many more kids moving into the county in that span of a year. So I think that's just a good point to make.
And then
Thank you.
some of the increases also, parents that send their kids to private school realized, hey, I want to take this voucher. So the next year they're like, okay. And then when the cap was taken off where anyone can get a scholarship, so that caused a big increase as well. Now, one thing that isn't shown on here and is the homeschool. And so for 22-23, the homeschool numbers were 6,632, and families of that number was 4,759. I don't have the information of whether they're taking the PEP scholarship, but the PEP scholarship, which is from the Florida tax credits, is not part of our FEFP. I just wanted to, so it gets a little confusing. So when you ask about homeschooling, that if they're taking a scholarship, it is not part of the FEFP, the funding that we receive.
May I want to just jump in there because I appreciate this slide very much, much like Ms. Campbell said. Am I on? Okay.
Can you go back to the slide, because we've been referring to it? We all have it on ours, but I don't think the public.
No, I'm talking about that one.
There you go.
No, I'm talking about the other one. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, this one. I think it's important because we hear lots of chatter about the benefits and the negatives of expansions of vouchers. And I've always said, first of all, every state's very different on how they handle it. But one of my arguments is I don't have anything wrong with parents making a choice for their kids to go somewhere else. And honestly, especially in our state that's flourishing of a budget or flourishing economically, I have no problem with the state even paying for it. But the problem is that the funding from the state is not meeting that need. And the reality is, like we see here, only 10% of those scholarships left their public schools. Only 10% of the scholarship number. So when you look at the total students of the state of Florida, we don't have that on this slide, but it's a very, very small number of students. The majority of parents are choosing their local community schools. So when the pie is getting eaten up by these scholarships, that's the real problem. So there's nothing wrong with the choice. There's nothing wrong with helping these parents pay for these opportunities, but the state needs to be adequately funding it. And that's where the problem lies. It's not that we're fighting to keep our students necessarily. Yes, we want them to not leave us. That's not really what's impacting our budget significantly. It's that the pie is getting eaten by more and more people, but the pie isn't getting much larger.
Okay, so this is the Florida Education Finance Program, the conference report. And you can see through here that, you know, at first glance, it can be a little bit misleading, like I mentioned before, because you have to understand that the calculations include the charter and the scholarship FTE enrollment. So it's all commingled within the FEFP, and then you need a Rebecca to extract everything to tell you what goes in what bucket and who's earning what, and she's amazing doing that. And so for the charters, the money flows through us. We're a pass-through. For the scholarships, that money never comes to us. It's just taken off on the top. So when you take a look at this, you have to realize this is the first shot, snapshot you would see for the conference report. And you would have to be able to know that, okay, this is going to include district, charter, and scholarship. I wonder what our portion is what I do quite often. And then our base FEFP equals our weighted FTE times our BSA times our cost wage factor, and then also a small district factor if we had one. And Bavard, our cost wage factor is 1. You know, there's other districts that have a 1 point something, like, you know, Monroe or high cost areas to live, so they have a higher cost factor. And then some of them also have a higher property value. So the way the Florida FEFP works is they fund all districts to the average property, right? And then so if a district is above that amount, they're allowed to keep the portion that is that discretionary, the 0.748. So the other districts can keep that. We are under that average, so we get a compression to make us up to the average. So I guess my point is not all districts are funded the same. If you take a look at the FFP, you can see that per student funding from this calculation, Brevard is number 46. That's something that cannot control. That's just the way it is. So I just wanted to point that out. And then also remember that number, the 53.2 million, because that's the difference from the third calc and then to the conference report. And so the next slide.
I want to ask a clarifying question.
Okay.
So you said, and you said this in our 101, but I just want to ask a clarifying question again too for the public to hear. So you said per FEFP, even though we're the 10th largest school district in the state of Florida, we're technically being funded as if we're in the 46th place.
If you take a look at per student funding, we're 46.
Right. I think that's important for people to hear. Thank you.
Okay, and so this breaks out, like I was talking before, and this is all Rebecca doing this, which is actually very amazing how she's able to do this so quickly. But it breaks out the FEFP, the funds for BPS schools, the funds the charters receive, and the funds the scholarship receives. And you know, there's differences here, and then you can also see the state-funded discretionary down towards the bottom. That is solely funds for scholarship students. So again, you know, it can be misleading when you look at the total numbers. You really have to know how to break those out to understand what is being funded. And then the box over on the right, in previous years, we had the FEFP base, and it was like our discretionary dollars. We could use that. We wasn't held to a certain categorical. Last year, that was changed, and there's these categoricals that are listed are now part of our base FTE or our base FEFP, which and it's mandated that we provide those dollars. So that kind of takes away, you know, we were supposed to gain flexibility, but in reality we haven't. But then you have to really be careful to, when you look at the growth percentage on the previous slide, it looks like the BSA increased more. That would be discretionary dollars, but it actually did not. So it gets a little confusing, and as we, you know, go through this, it'll be the norm, and we'll figure out how to proceed. But we're still trying to understand and pull and extract things to make sure that we have the right numbers and that we can plan correctly. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to mention, so they changed the name for TSIA, but I'm just going to stick with TSIA. And the growth, you can see for salary growth that's mandated for teachers is the 3.9 million. And then, depending on how it's decided to distribute those dollars, if you're trying to provide more dollars, for veteran teachers or increase the minimum base, however you use it. But if you just take the 3.9 million and go across the board at, for average teacher, it would be $770. So on this slide, if you see in far right on with the green, the 53.2 million, that's the number that I asked you to remember. So we start with that number because that's the difference, that's the increase from the previous calculation to the first calc. And then we have to subtract out all the categoricals. So all those categoricals are meant for that purpose, and we can't spend it on anything else. So that equates to 8.2 million. And so you subtract that, and then we have to take out the scholarship adjustment, which is the 20.9, and then the charter growth, which is the 9.2. And then what we find that our increase from last year for budget purposes is 14.9 million.
Can I ask a question, Cindy?
Sure.
On the previous slide, when you're breaking down the categoricals, the salary maintenance, that 20 million, what would that encumber?
So every year, or for the last, how many years? 3 or 4? Since 2020, Governor DeSantis wanted to increase the teacher beginning salary. So every year when he did that, we have to maintain it because it would be recurring. So that money is theirs to maintain all those raises.
That's
Okay.
the TSIA.
Okay, all right, thank you, I missed that.
Okay. I think I'm on the next slide. Okay, so this is a slide that shows that the increase was 14.9 million for the district. And the first, and so we have some unavoidable cost increases. The first one is health insurance. Right now, our actuaries are advising us that we need to increase premiums by $8 million. The general fund portion would be $7 million. Now, this is, this could be high. The number, this is the number at a time that, they projected looking at the past. We could have things that, could change that number, but this is the number that was provided, and so that's the number that I'm using here. Workers' comp rates, we have been funding workers' comp from general fund because we haven't increased the rates in several years, so we making that right. And then coming off ESSER, there's positions that we're bringing back into the general fund that are, they're actually, most of them are positions that used to be funded from general funds, and then we moved it to ESSER. Now we're bringing it back, 2.1 million. And this is really, if you think about it, over the last couple of years, we've had all these ESSER dollars, $250 million, and what we're going to carry is 2.1. I think that's really pretty good management. There was no large cliff to deal with. Other primary cost increases, emergent needs, those are things that we may not even know we have to have that yet. We can't predict what's going to happen, but I'm sure there's going to be something that we realize that we have to take care of. Collective bargaining, we have to incentivize and provide our employees raises and And then also we had our inflationary increases are 2 million. And that's utilities, electric, gas, water. And then below there, potential offsets, there's areas that we can look at to improve processes, divest, create efficiencies. There's things that we can work on and do. And we also need to increase our fund balance to get it back to pre-COVID time where it was very level at a financial condition of 8. So we're adding another 1.5 to that fund balance. That would get us back up to about a 7% fund condition balance. And Moody's, Fitch are looking at that really closely, and it really affects our stability, our credit ratings, all those things. So it's really important that we are responsible and make sure we have the right fund balance and funds. And this is the last slide. And so general fund, when the way the cost report codes the charter payments that we provide to the charters, they put it in purchase services. I don't know why they do that, but they do. So when you look at our budget book, then you'll see, you know, well, I thought salaries and benefits were higher, and then in a percentage-wise for our Fund 100. But then when you take out those purchase services that really are charter, you can see for Bavard traditional salaries and benefits is about 85.5. I mean, that's our business. It's all about teachers and people and supporting. So when you look to reduce that's, you know, kind of where you are. And then when you have to realize that when we're providing incentives, raises, compensation, we have a lot of people. So that is all I have. If you have any questions or want to go back to anything.
Thank you, Ms. Lozinski. Board, do you have any questions?
I think it's
Go ahead, Mr.
good for the public to know that we've already met with Ms. Lisinski. We've already sat down with her with this entire presentation, and we've gone through it.
Your mic's on.
It is on. I think I just may not have been. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, karaoke.
Just wanted to say that thank you to Ms. Lisinski. I, along with my other fellow board members, have gone through this presentation with you and asked any questions that we had towards it and everything else. We appreciate you coming forward and being prepared. That's all. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. Anybody else?
Yeah, just
Go ahead, Ms. Campbell.
briefly. Appreciate the work that everyone has done across all the cabinet to do the scrubbing. I know it's not fun, but it's, you know, those increased efficiencies that you talk about, that's where we're going to find them. And is looking at, you know, is this working? Do we need to keep paying for it? You know, if we do, being able to justify it. I know that's part of the process where they're coming back to you and coming back to the superintendent to justify those expenditures. So that discretionary funding, so back on the, I don't remember what slide because I don't have page numbers on this, but the one that you were talking about, the discretionary funding. So this was, you know, I've gone through FSBA's budget class. This is the first time it really hit me. No, back up one more. That 0.748, every district has a different
Yes.
millage that the state assigns to us because the way our funding comes, you know, is the state determines the amount per student. But it's all a little different because of some of these factors. But that 0.748, everybody has a 0.748. It's the same across all the districts. So this was the first time that it really hit me that that's the part that everybody gets to keep. And so why Monroe County has so much more funding per student than we do is because of that 0.748. In addition, and well, that's one of the reasons. The cost factor is the other, but that 0.748 makes such a huge difference. And as Brevard, that's where you're saying we're number 46, right? Or is it in the per student funding, or is it both? That was my question.
Well, it's a reason for that. I
Okay.
mean, because I believe, if my memory is correct, Monroe actually 22 million from just the .728,
For a much, much smaller district.
right? But
Yeah.
very property rich.
Right. So that number 46 that you're saying, that is our per student funding we're number 46.
Correct.
Okay. That helps put us into perspective when we see the DOE lists, like where we are in teacher salary and average salary, all of that makes it kind of clarifies that picture. Because people say, oh, we're Brevard and but and if I think about that cost factor, I know the legislature changed that a little bit, but we used to be under 1, right? So we used to actually have to give money, not really technically you give money back to the state, but our funding was reduced because we were 0.98, whatever. Since I've been on the board, it's always been below 1. And I know this was a new formula, but now we're at 1. So at least we're not losing money to other districts. Because we, lower cost of living, I guess, they would say in Brevard. So thank you for clarifying that. So on the final slide, or two slides to the end, where it had our 14.9 million broken down. Yeah, that one. So when you talk about the fund balance, it's so important because with lots of potential building in our future, we have to have a great credit rating because these lines of credit, we've done loans potentially that we're going to have for building these new facilities. We need to have the very best rates so we can get the most bang for our bucks, literally. But that's a one-time, that increasing is going to be a one-time increase, right, to get us back that 1.5 million.
Right, and then we have to sustain over the years.
Okay, right. So, and you're saying that one time we're going to get, hopefully, from these efficiencies and or we budgeted in, because it's not necessarily because it's not recurring, it's not necessarily a budgetary thing. So I know you've got it, this plus this equals this, but do we already kind of have an idea? Are we going to just start off the bat, take the 1.5 million out? Or are we expecting at the end of this year that the first 1.5 million left over from either this year's budget we just finished or this coming one we've just entered? Where's that 1.5 million going to come from?
Well, right now, the way the budget is built, the tentative budget, and that those it can still be changed until September 11th. It's in the budget increased, the
Okay.
fund balance right now.
Just so as just part of the budget, we've calculated $1.5 million to go straight into unassigned
Correct.
fund balance. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. And that was it for me.
All right, thank you, Ms. Campbell. Ms. Jenkins or Mr. Trent, do you have anything?
Yeah, just to echo what Matt was saying here, thank you for the time that we spent on the one-on-one, answer the questions. The potential cost offsets, that's exciting to me. That's an interest for always, forever. Anyone has anything to do with budget items is increasing the efficiencies. If we can do things in a more efficient manner to save money, we're always looking to do that. But also keeping, and you mentioned that many times, which is very refreshing, that this has everything to do with student achievement. So I appreciate that. It's coming from everyone here in the district, and it carries on through, the bean counters even. That's wonderful. So I appreciate that. That's what Dr. Rendell preached from the moment we started to interview him, that everything and everyone that works at district or in this district, it's all about student achievement. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins? No, you're good. All right. Thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Dr. Rendell, do you have anything to add?
No, I think echo, though, Ms. Campbell's comments. I do have something, I guess. The fund balance is critical. We just refinanced some certificates of participation and saved the district about $5 million in debt service. And we were able to do that because of our strong credit rating. And one of the things they look at is our fund balance. And so we need to make sure we have the appropriate fund balance so that we can continue to be looked at with a strong, financial stability position if we have to borrow money to build schools and things like that.
Yes.
Very nice.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for the presentation. We appreciate all the hard work that you put in to that. We are on to the last item, which is on our agenda, which is the climate survey data for school year 24. I'm not sure who's.
So we're going to be switching PowerPoints, and
Okay.
Mr. Poole is going to be presenting. I don't know if you want to take a short break
Okay,
or
let's
not.
take a 5-minute recess to go to the restroom, and then we'll get everything set up.
Okay.
Come back at 10:15. Thank you.
3, 2.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much. We have Mr. Poole and Ms. Dampierre here to present the climate survey data for school year 24, and we will go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to actually interrupt
Oh, sorry.
and do a few disclaimers. First of all, I need to apologize to the Student Services Department because they've prepared this presentation 3 times. It's a ton of information. It's a ton of information. It's the student survey, it's the parent survey, and the staff survey, and I wanted them to do it all in one presentation. It's a ton of information, and they've had to redo it 3 times because we originally had over 200 slides, and then we got down to like 175, and I'm not sure how many we're down to. 77.
Is the final.
So-
Okay.
So what I want the public to understand, and the board especially, these are just some highlights of the survey, just some snippets of information from the surveys. There is a lot of information, and we will give you the codes to go in and check the survey out completely. I did tell the public we will share the information with them, so there's a huge PDF that's being created that we will have a link to the website so they can dive in there and see as much data as they want. And I know it's in Mr. Poole's first slide, but we did use a company called Youth Truth for the survey. One of the reasons we chose to use them for the survey is we've been using them, that company, for the student survey for 4 years. And so we wanted to see some longitudinal data, see what our scores were over time in certain areas. And they also have a parent survey and they also have a staff survey, so that's why we went with them. We are not sure. More than likely, we will not use them next year. They were not as customer friendly when we wanted to change some questions or eliminate some questions. There were some that they just didn't, we didn't feel like we were treating customer first kind of thing. So we've looked at some other vendors and we'll probably use some other vendors. But the information we have, we want to share with you. There are some things that are, good things for us to learn over time and some positive highlights. But there's also some areas where, hey, this is something that we need to work on. So it's going to be 75 or so slides and a lot of information, but anybody who wants to dive deeper, we can provide, an avenue for that. So again, apologies to the Student Services Department for asking them to redo this 3 times, and I'll turn it over to them. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Riddell. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I'm going to go over our Youth Truth Climate Survey results. This project we're going to briefly discuss, as Dr. Riddell said, the process. As you can see on the first slide, we did change survey providers, and we did have some changes to the process. We actually had to get parental consent. We did that electronically through Focus, which was a new process, and we wanted to make sure we were in compliance with our new laws. And we changed the audience. So instead of grades 3 through 12, we began the survey from grade 5. Okay, so this just talks about why, the purpose, and we wanted to gather stakeholder feedback on how our families, students, and staff experience Brevard Public Schools, what their perception is. And in turn, we'd like to create a thriving culture based on that feedback. All right, we have our student survey results that we're going to go over first. I'd like to note that when you see the questions, we're going to have each theme, and we're going to have the highest question indicated with a green star, and then you're going to see the lowest question with a red triangle, okay? We'll have a legend at the bottom of each slide. So each theme has its own set of questions. Elementary, middle school, and high school, the themes vary slightly, but we've also indicated the highest rated theme. So for elementary school, it was engagement.
So keep in mind, it's a 5-point scale. So anything above 3 is positive, 2.5 is medium, so.
Excuse me, Dr. Rendell, if I may, for elementary students, the scale was from 1 to 3.
Oh, perfect, then even better.
It was 1 to 3.
I was like, oh.
So I wanted to point that out.
Good,
And,
thanks for correcting me, because that's good.
For our secondary schools, there is a scale of 0 to 5, okay? All right.
That makes me feel better.
And if you have any questions along as I go through, please let me know. You see our highest rated question and lowest rated question for engagement. And the theme of engagement for elementary talks about how students perceive their engagement with the school and their education. Okay.
Can I just butt in for a second?
Yes, absolutely.
What was defining 0 through 3? Was it sliding scale, or did the numbers have?
Okay, so
Words
yes, the
and
numbers do have
meanings.
meaning. Okay, so a 1 would be no, hardly ever. A 0 would be a non-answer. A 1 would be no, hardly ever. A 2 would be sometimes, and a 3 would be yes, very much for elementary students. Okay.
These questions, did we get to pick these questions? Let me just ask that question, because I'm looking at these going, our highest and our lowest question is a little similar. So that's a little odd.
This was a youth truth tool they used, as Dr. Rendell stated before. They did not allow much. We couldn't customize the questions as much as we would have liked to. So what we did, that was one of the reasons why we did change the age group.
Okay, all right.
And on the next slide, we'll see.
Are you okay?
Bless you.
We have some. We do have some historical data. The student results are going to be displayed with some historical data at the top. The years are indicated on the left, and we have disaggregated it by grade.
Okay.
And again, our scale is from 0 to 3 for elementary students. The next theme is academic challenge, and this addresses how students feel about their learning and how challenging it is and how relevant the instruction is. And again, we have our information disaggregated by grade, and we see the trend from 2020 to 2024.
Yeah, this is where I have to go back and think about the change of audience, because when you have third and fourth graders who are still more gung-ho about school, to me, we could look at that and go, oh my gosh, this year was a huge drop-off in engagement and academic challenge, but then we're losing those, the ones who are still, life is sunny and rosy, and they're not
The
starting to get into
idyllic
the
third and fourth graders.
hormonal years. Right, yeah, exactly. So we lost something with those. I understand why we did it, because third and fourth graders also don't understand as much. Right. So, but yeah, I'm not going to set off the alarm bells yet, because we lost some of our positive end.
And again, Mrs. Campbell, this is a snapshot. We do have a more in-depth report available for everyone. Okay, so the next theme is on instructional methods, and this is how students are describing strategies and approaches to what their teachers are using in the classroom. The next theme for elementary students is culture. And this describes how orderly and respectful the classroom environment is, or they perceive the classroom environment. Okay, the last category for elementary students is belonging. It's pretty much self-explanatory. It describes about their feeling of belonging in their school. And this is one of the categories where we only have 2 years of data, so we only have 1 year of historical data to compare with. This question was added last year. Oh, I'm sorry, one more, relationships. This describes how strong and supportive the relationships are with teachers. And we have our trend data here. Okay, we move on to middle school, and this is where the scale goes to 5.
Okay.
We have our highest theme as academic challenge. Okay, the themes they're slightly different for For the most part, they are the same. Between middle and high school, there is one theme, which is college and career readiness, and we'll cover that when we get to that point. And again, we have the same format. Okay. And again, the academic challenge definition, this theme does evolve slightly. Students have more courses that are offered in secondary school, so this is related to how they feel about their coursework as well as the strategies their teachers are using. Okay, next we have culture. This describes how students feel about the way their school fosters a culture of respect and fairness.
I'm actually surprised at the green star on this because, if I recall from previous years, I remember this actually being a low mark, the one about students treating adults with respect. So I'd be interested to see that, to dig deeper into that one on this question, because I kind of remember that being flipped with the second question.
You will be able to see trend data on that in the full report. Okay, belonging and peer collaboration describes the way in which students feel welcome at their school and have collaborative relationships with their classmates. Okay, and on to relationships. For secondary, for middle school, it describes the support they receive and the personal attention from their teachers. The questions are a little bit more complex than the elementary questions. Okay, on to high school. Again, we have academic challenge as the leading theme, this grade level. Okay, and again, we have relationships. So we have our highest rated and lowest rated questions. And the data is disaggregated by grade level along with our trend data. Next, we have belonging and peer collaboration. Theme of culture. Again, this describes how students feel about the fairness and respect of their school environment. And this final theme for high school students is college and career readiness, and this describes the degree to which students feel they are equipped or have been equipped to pursue college and careers. And again, we do have some increases in this area. Ninth grade was particularly high this year, and we wondered if that was due to the new CTE offerings, which could be the cause for that. Okay, next on to our family results.
Before you jump into the next survey, all of this Dr. Rendell briefly mentioned, but about with the consent, or you mentioned that really changed the factor. I mean, I know the numbers are drastically reduced participants from previous years, so any big changes kind of have to be taken, all of it, with a grain of salt. But I just want to, I already know the answer to this question, but I ask that each school is using this data for their specific purposes, right? And if I understand, when you had the lead conference several weeks ago, along with their academic data, the leadership team at each school was using this to try to make their decisions and their plans for the coming year, correct?
Correct. Yes, ma'am. The culture and climate data was provided to every school individually, and this was used when they were creating the culture and climate portion of their school improvement plan. So again, we discussed academics and we discussed our culture and climate, and this was used by schools. So, I know this is the 30,000-foot view, but the schools are able to go in and look at their own individual sites and gather information from those reports.
From their own students. So
Yes, ma'am.
That's really important. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
so-
just, they did create a goal for culture and climate with strategies, and they did have all the stakeholders except students there to create those strategies and goals to be able to monitor. So this information was sent out to schools back in May so they could review it, dive deeper into it. They had it in preparation for the Ascend 2024, which included stakeholders from their schools. So they really had an opportunity. We spent a day looking at this data in addition to discipline, attendance, to come up with a culture goal as well as strategies that will be monitored throughout the school year. So it just wasn't academic. Culture is important as well, because if the students are not there and if they're not in the classroom learning, and if the environment is not suitable for the employees as well, we want it to be a positive learning environment. And they really delved deep into this particular strategy and goal for next year, because this was added. This wasn't previously a part of the school improvement plan. So,
I would, I want to echo the sentiments of Ms. Campbell and Mr. Poole and Ms. Dampierre. What I love is that the strategy was, like you said, to tackle the culture and the climate, because ultimately, regardless of how you feel like it's going as an adult, if your students have a perception that it's not going the right way, you're going to have a decrease in academic engagement and academic performance and all of the things that we care most about. But you have to have that calm and supportive environment and for them to feel supported. And I don't know if this board was present for it, and I don't know, time blends together. I think it was 2 years ago at a superintendent summit. I think we had a panel of students up there and kind of telling us how it is and how it feels, middle school students. And it's such an eye-opening experience, because again, as an adult, you can perceive it however you want to. And yes, you make the rules and they need to follow it, but it is very interesting to see their perspective and how they feel and how they would give suggestions of the most simplistic things in the world to make them feel more comfortable and supported by their teachers. And a teacher may not realize that they're not giving them that. They might think that they are. But I remember there was just one student who was saying, one of the things that would make it so much easier would be if I'm having a rough moment or a rough day, to not tell me like, oh, don't worry, like it'll go away, forget about it. Because in that moment, that middle schooler feels like, no, this is everything, this is the end of my life. Just hear that student out. And I know that's not the simple, easiest solution in the world, but it is interesting to kind of just hear from that student perspective. So I appreciate that we took the time to do that and to focus on the thing that really creates a healthy foundation for all of our kids.
So if you can go back one slide, just go back one slide. So this was a list of questions as a high school principal when we were using this youth truth survey data. This was a list of questions that I paid great attention to. So for example, the highest rated question is, my school has helped me develop the skills and knowledge I need for college level classes. So they feel like they're prepared. The ones that are going to college, at least, feel like they're prepared to go to college. But then the lowest rated question is, my school has helped me figure out which careers match my interests and abilities. Now, we're not necessarily a job placement service. That's not, one of our things, but we're supposed to help prepare them for their future. So that would kind of include helping them pick out their future or career path or whatever. And so I would look at these at my individual school and see how my students answered in these questions. If they feel like we're getting them ready, but we're not helping them choose, then we got to look at what are we doing. So, the second question there, one of the years I was at Cocoa Beach, my school has helped me understand the steps I need to take in order to apply to college, was our lowest rated question in this category. So the highest was, again, they're getting me ready for college. But the lowest rated was, they're not helping me with the application process and the steps needed to get to college. So we revised some of the things we were doing based on that information. So know that that's what the schools are doing. They're taking a look at this data, looking at their practices, especially attacking their lowest rated questions. There is a question in there that we went through that says, I feel safe in school, and if that was ever my lowest rated question, I knew I had to do something. You know, you want it to be one of your highest rated questions. There was a question in the elementary section about the teacher-student relationship that was actually the lowest rated question for us as a district. So I would imagine that elementary school principals are taking a look at that to make sure that they're scoring, you know, the feedback they're getting from their students is that it's a positive relationship, not a negative one. So ton of information that we just raced through. Every school has an individual report, especially for the student survey data. It's 4 years worth of data they can check. Yes, it's a smaller sample size this year. Yes, we changed it to only 5th and 6th grade in elementary, but the data is still there, especially if you see trends. If there's an area that you're not receiving positive responses or as positive as you think, then you have to kind of reevaluate what you're doing. So hugely insightful data if we take the time to break it down, look at it, and learn from it. So I think it was great that we required it as part of the school improvement plan for climate and culture, and this is one of the tools they were able to analyze to develop their plan. So really, really good stuff. Now, the family and staff surveys, it'll be the first year we did it with Youth Truth, so there's no historical data, but still good data that can provide us information about how we're doing. So, sorry.
Can I ask a quick question before we move on from the student survey? And you may not know this, but when you look at your elementary, your middle school, and your high school, what percentage of students in each one of those separate categories would you say filled out this survey? So do we have?
So I do have numbers, Mrs. Wright. So I have a comparison from this year to last year. I can give you those. So we had 3,919 elementary students compared to 17,071 students this year. I'm sorry, from 2023. Middle school this year we had 2,724, okay, compared to 8,259. And for high school we had 4,168 compared to 15,477.
Okay, and I know, and I'm only asking that, I know that's probably not like a one of those things that we're so super excited about, but I think it would be wise for that to maybe be a huge message that maybe parents don't want their students surveyed in this manner. And I'm telling you as a parent myself who has children in BPS schools, I feel very much like I don't want my child surveyed on certain things. I, as the adult in the room, would like to be asked the questions, and I'm happy to give the feedback. But when it comes to children and data mining and surveying, I think that's already happening, whether we like it or not. And so those numbers are, I think, important. They say something.
And just so you know, we do, based on statute, anytime we're asking students about their well-being, we have to get parent permission, and that is why we had to make sure that the parents gave permission for the students to take the survey.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we will continue to do that.
Yes, thank you.
I want to point out one thing too, if people are looking at these slides and seeing the lowest rated question, to remember that we're not putting the numbers up there either, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a really negative number. It literally just means it's the lowest rated question. So I just want people to be aware of that before they freak out when they read some of
It's a
those.
really good point, because sometimes it's only 1% or 2% lower than
Yeah,
the
right.
highest rated question.
Right.
Like every question in that category might be getting a 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and it's just the lowest rated
And
question.
just because it's red and green, I wanted people to be aware of that. I want to be a little cognizant of what Ms. Wright said. Just, it's also an assumption to state that as well. I mean, it's statistically an impediment to require someone to opt into something. There's always a lower response when you require an opt-in versus an opt-out. And there has been a lot of conversation in the world of the danger of the survey and stuff like that, making people hesitant. And so when people see the benefit of it and how it helps this district plan and make positive changes for the students, hopefully we'll have a bigger turnout next year.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and reiterate the point that we do not have historical data, as we wanted to have one company, provide the survey for all of our stakeholders. And again, it's the same format. We will show you the theme, and at the beginning of each grade level, we'll show you the highest ranking theme. And for elementary, our elementary school families, it was relationships. middle school families, relationships as well, and for high school families. So that theme was consistent all the way through. Okay, so for our theme of engagement for family surveys, give you a brief description of that. It describes the degree to which families are engaged with their school and empowered to influence decision-making. And if you look at this chart, this is a little bit different from the other charts. We still have the color-coded chart. Green means that was the highest rated question. Red would be the lowest rated question. And we have an E for elementary, M for middle school, and H for high school.
Sorry to interrupt you, but do you mind just for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 saying what those stood for?
I'm sorry?
So for last one, like 2 meant sometimes, 3 meant.
Oh, yes, okay,
Very
yes,
much.
yes. So this is a standard Likert scale, I'm sorry. So 1 would be I disagree, I somewhat disagree. 3 would be I am neutral.
Neutral. Okay.
4 would be I agree, and 5 would be I strongly agree.
Thank you.
Okay. So this display is a little different. We have all 3 levels displayed on one slide for you. So for the engagement theme, again, our elementary schools were the leading level there. Okay, next we have relationships. This describes the degree to which families experience positive relationships in their schools based on respect, care, and approachability. Okay, and we have our averages by grade level. Next is culture. This describes the degree to which families believe their schools foster shared goals, respect, fairness, and diversity. Okay, next we have communication and feedback. And this details the openness and effective lines of communication between families and schools. And we have resources. This describes the way in which schools deploy the necessary resources to support all students. And school safety describes the degree to which families believe their school is a safe place for students.
That's not fair with only 2 questions. It's either going to be a star or that's why we keep in mind. Be really close.
Yeah, because the averages actually aren't bad.
Yeah.
So do you guys have, how many families
Yes.
participated in this?
Family participation. So we had, I'll go by level, and we had 5,260 families for elementary, 1,930 for middle school, 1,582 for high school, for a total of 8,772. And we do always notice a taper of, from elementary to high school. Seems like parents are more concerned at that their children are younger.
I think it's important. I think these numbers are going to be more critical when you look at the school level. Honestly, for all of the surveys, it's really more beneficial for the school level than the district. But as a positive note, none of these all of these categories, in every single grade level is above neutral, which means a positive. And it's always frustrating when you have like a numbered scale because it's not a 5. But the reality is it's positive, and that's a good thing. And the reason I wanted to know the numbers too is because there's such a stark, and obviously, like you said, it's expected to go down as we get higher in grades, but the stark contrast between high school and elementary it is an assumption, yes, but one can assume there'd be more negative feelings for the respondents, like they're reaching out and responding because they feel more negatively, I would think, at that higher of a level, and to still be on the positive side, that's a good thing.
Again, once we, drill deeper into the results, you will be able to see the percent positives, which, those numbers are probably a stronger, indicator of what's happening and how people feel.
Mr. Poole, thank you for providing those numbers. I know it's a different survey, but do you have the numbers from last year's parent survey to compare it to?
So it was, I have the number of respondents. I can make that available. But it was a totally different platform. And that's where we had the issue, when we used SurveyMonkey, as I, stated before, which is it's nice that we can customize that, but, it's different. It's different. So I can't provide the number of responses that we.
Higher, lower?
Can I get back to you on that?
Yes, you can. And part of it is, I know I've told parents that time of year, I can't remember, I think you shared it one time, there was a meme somebody made, we're reaching out to you to contact you about your auto insurance, your auto car warranty or whatever, and then somebody had slashed through that and put, your BPS parent survey, because it was a joke, because we were getting so many texts the year before, for this one, and but like we hounded people, and people are like, how do I opt out once I've already taken it? But I mean, we want to get good survey data. There's a balance between not irritating people, but so I don't know that we did it quite that overboard this year, but it was still, anything we can do to encourage that engagement is good.
Of course.
We ought to share the meme ourselves next year. That would be good. Yeah.
Okay, and as we move into the staff survey results, again, keep in mind it's going to be the same scenario as the family results. We don't have historical data, as we didn't use the same company in the past.
Can you tell us how many participated in the survey before we start?
Yes, of course. So for elementary, we had 2,792. Middle school, 659. And high school, 946. So this year we had a total of 4,403 compared to the previous year of 3,343. So we did increase there. Okay, so again, we have our themes for elementary school staff. We had a tie for engagement and relationships with the staff survey. Our middle school staff survey, engagement was the highest rated theme. In high school, this was our general theme, our overall feeling about our school. Okay, here's a list of the general questions and the ratings by level. Again, this is an overall feeling. And we have it disaggregated by school level again, same format. So engagement, this theme describes the way or how staff feel about their work and that they're empowered to influence the decisions that their schools make. Okay, so we have 2 pages here. So I'm gonna, if you need me to go back to, between page 2 and 1, we had quite a few questions for this theme for relationships. So we can see our highest rated themes for, again, keep in mind the H is for high school, M is for middle school, and the E is for elementary. So I'll give you a moment to look at the questions before I move on. And I'll tell you about this theme. It's relationships. It describes the degree to which the staff experience positive relationships in their school based on respect, care, and approachability. Okay, here's the second page. And our averages, our average scores. Okay, next we have culture. This describes the degree to which staff believe their school fosters a culture of shared vision, respect, and effective communication. And again, this is one where we had multiple pages, so I'll go back if you need me to. And our average ratings. Okay. Professional development and support describes the degree to which staff receive meaningful feedback, have opportunities to grow professionally, and feel supported in their work. Give you a moment to look at the first page, and then the second page. We have our average ratings. Okay, school safety. This describes a staff member's level of perceived safety for themselves and students on campus, as well as of the rules and protocols in place to address violence at school. I would like to note here, we see our lowest rated question is, I feel safe from harm while at my school. So for high school, we had a 76% positive rating, meaning that they rated the question agree or strongly agree. But I want to tell you about the range. The range was from 3.38 to 4.13, so it wasn't even one point, and you'll be able to see that in the report. So that range was very, very small, and that's something to keep in mind. Okay, for elementary, it was a 78% positive rating. And the range was a little bit wider. It was from 3.54 to 4.3. Say, again, not one full point, but still, we want to keep in mind that that was the lowest rated question. And again, we have our averages by school level. Okay, so the links to each individual report by level have been linked to this page, but we are working to make one document where we can just click it one time. But we do want to have this available if people want to go look at those specific levels.
Were there any comment sections on the staff one this time around?
Yes, we did
Like
have
free comment, sorry.
Yes, we did have we have the comments, but it was a lot to put on this, but we did receive comments from students, staff, and family as well.
Are those on these links or no?
No, ma'am. The comments are not on those
Can
links.
we get them? And it, not an emergency, but is that possible to send
Yeah.
that to?
Yes. Yes, we can provide those. We have to make sure, we have to take, if we do, we have to take
we'll
out
have to
any
take a look at a
identifiable
couple of them, 'cause
information. Right.
Have identifiable information in there.
Okay, yeah,
People's names.
I'm interested in just because some of these questions are, when you take them very literally, they might be interpreted a certain way. It's just interesting to see like their outward response.
So just going back to the student survey and the challenges with that, I know that we're going to use a different vendor for all these, possibly different vendors for each survey, which is fine as long as it's, high quality, we did, with our online registration process this year, we took care, schools had the opportunity to kind of do a lot of that up front, which we haven't been able to do before because it's all electronic enrollment. I did mine in the first week the enrollment was open, so I can't remember. But did we ask questions like this as far as participation in the survey? Or is that something that we'll do later when it's time for the survey?
So we'll do that when it's time for the survey, as we have to provide the questions for parents. They have to have that choice. They need to, be able to vet those questions and make sure they take a look at what their children are going to be, reading. We have to give them that chance to do that.
That's really,
so that's not a part of the enrollment piece.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and that's good to clarify and good to know. And just to know this year, I think I have a different take on it than you do. I think this is yes, there are people who don't want their kids to answer anything, but honestly, the drop in participation is, there's no way around. You had to do extra work for your kid to do it. And then you look at the middle school and the high school, the parent could have provided the less engaged parents, which are high school, middle school parents, less likely to do it. And even if the parent provided the survey, if the student decided, I don't want to do it, even if their parent, then we don't have that information. And that's totally up to them, and we deal with the data that we have. But what's really important about this, making sure that it's appropriate. And we've done, even with the Youth Truth Survey, we've done a lot of work over the last 4 years that we've had it to try to eliminate those controversial questions that might cause people, to be stressed out about it. But it's a delicate balance, but we need student voice. We need student voice. Teachers and their classrooms need student voice. And us as a district, as district leaders, the principals need student voice. Dr. Rendell values student voice, and so he monthly meets with our student government leaders, and that is his, I can't remember what you call him,
Student Advisory Council.
Student Advisory Council. But it's one thing to hear from the parents, and we need to hear from them too. And the student voice is not the be all end all. It has to be balanced with what's going, because they have their perspective and they are, their cognitive abilities aren't fully developed yet, but that student voice is important. And so whatever safe way we can do it with parent approval, I believe we need to continue to find a way to get that input in a way that's anonymous. And you mentioned the word data mining. I want us to be careful with that, because I've answered those questions many times with people. It's identifiable, because there was a time when someone said, in the free comment, if a student showed that they might have been, suicidal or whatever, Youth Truth had the ability, did they have the ability to go back and track down an IPN address, which they would give, and then it was, then Youth Truth has access to that. Well, no, then they could get it over to the school personnel who, if they could figure out who took that survey on what computer, could maybe trace it back, because that's a need. But so then it was turned into, it's data mining. I guess if you're asking students their survey, anything that's, and then it's getting reported, you could call it data mining, but it's not traceable back to the specific student so that they're in danger or that some outside company has access to their personal and private information. They don't. They didn't with this one, and we're going to make sure with whatever we choose in the future that is the case. But I think we need to be careful. We always need to be careful to make sure that our students are safe, that their information is safe. But again, I just can't get past that student voice is important in all the ways that we can collect it. Not all the ways, but in that personal, the teacher is getting that input every day in their classrooms. And, and administrators are standing in the hallways, and students will come up to them and go, blah, 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 about whatever they're complaining, what to complain about or rejoicing about. But to have a consistent way that we can get that voice in there in an anonymous way, where they can be honest and not have to worry about, who's going to do something. If I complain about my teacher, what's going to happen? Is she going to give me a lower grade? That may not happen, but we're humans. We think that way. I think that's important.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Does anybody else have anything else to add about?
Forgive me, because you may have literally just said this, but I was just processing a little bit. So, and I don't, there's so much changes to the statute that I don't know anymore. So going back to the question about the enrollment paperwork, possibly getting the permission, then they have to be able to have access to it to approve first. Yes. That's statute.
Yes.
Okay, so then never mind. Then my follow-up question would not make any sense. So thank you. But so, okay. There's no way around that then, because we'll never have this ahead of time before enrollment unless we reuse the same exact questions for the following year.
If we settle on a set of questions that we're going to use year
Yeah.
after year after year, yes, we could have it
Yeah.
as part of the re-enrollment process.
Okay. I think it's important, Ms. Campbell, you said something that kind of just sparked my memory too, is, if we do change vendors, if we don't, whatever, regardless, the next time this comes around, I think it's really important for us to articulate to the public exactly what you mentioned about how for the past 4 years, Brevard Public Schools has gone out of their way to eliminate questions that people would find controversial, because we had the ability to do that, and that in and of itself, just being open and honest about that might drive a little bit more turnout too. So okay, thank you.
And I'm going to follow up, Ms. Campbell, to what you said about student voice. And I 100% agree that student voice is absolutely important. I think this survey, and I think the legislator has also identified the fact that the parents are the ones that are in control, which is why the permission slip even exists to begin with. So I want to hear what the students say, but there's a ways around. This survey, to me, it is a bit irritating. It really is, and this is no offense to you guys. It was irritating to me before I was ever on this board, and I've spoke to many parents that feel exactly the same way. That they don't want their students asked these things because the adults in the room should be making the decisions and kind of steering the direction of how things go. When we talk about student voice, I think student voice is very important. When we look at your advisory council that you have with student government, that's really important. And guess what? Parents are signing their kids up to be a part of that and have that voice and speak there. And I think that's very, very important. And it absolutely can drive the ship on how we do things within our school district. But when we're talking especially about our elementary kids, I guess I'll respectfully agree to disagree that I don't think our elementary kids should be surveyed. I think that they're there to be educated, and I think that we can absolutely survey the parents on how do they feel the education is going. We can survey the teachers on how do you feel the culture is and the environment is in your school. But when it comes to asking a child a question that sometimes is quite frankly out of their grasp of really understanding the magnitude of how they answer it or what they're even answering, I don't know that that should be a factor that we look at and say, okay, this is how we're going to change X, Y, and Z because a student said this and the student could be 9 years old. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's where I just differ on
do.
where I land on this.
I do, but going back, these questions are in here and they're leveled. So, looking at the actual questions that are here, one, we've eliminated the 9-year-olds because we're only doing 5th and 6th graders. But questions like, do students stay busy in class? Do students behave in class? Do students from your class treat the teacher with respect? Those are the culture questions that a 10, 11, and 12-year-old should be able to identify and express. They're not complicated. And again, we're not talking about a single student or a single class of students or whatever responds negatively, so we're going to completely change. What I heard Mr. Poole say is each school got their data from the students, from the parents, from the teachers, and along with other things, not just this, they made a culture goal for their school. This was part of the equation. So I hear you, and yes, I believe you talked to lots of people who think the same way as you do. I believe you did. But, again, we're not asking them, we've removed the things, and the bullying questions, sometimes people, we're not talking about gender ideology, we're not talking about, do you think your teacher cares about you? Honestly, I want our schools to know that, because if schools have a low score on that, those schools want to know, hey, maybe the teachers think they're communicating in a certain way, but it's not quite getting across, so we can change how we do things. If they were, and again, I'm looking forward to the new survey, because even if there's some questions in here that we're like, okay, well, the rest of them are fine, but that one, no. We didn't have the ability with Youth Truth, is what you're saying, to edit those questions out. We can pick the questions that will really give us the data that we need. And then parents can make that choice.
All right, thank you. Does anybody else have anything else to add to this?
You go ahead, man.
No, I'm
Grabbing-
good.
Oh, you're the vice chair, you gotta
No.
wait. So, years ago, I proposed, when I would go to Sarasota and I would go to some of these other school boards, I proposed that we had a student representative that sat on the school board like they do. They have a student that sits there, and as you're going through things, the problem is that there was a disconnect, and I agreed with that the individual that was sitting up there didn't truly represent the student body because they were a single individual person, right? What Dr. Rendell does, where he meets with all of the student government people and stuff like that, gives a good culture of a wide variety. But what I do when I go into the schools is as a teacher, I knew that you had two different perspectives. You had one perspective that was from the student that was from student government, and then you had the other perspective of the kid that had like C's and B's and was basically running through the schools and doing different things too. So what I always try to do is I try to go into each one of the schools, talk to a class, and then pull some of the kids that I can identify that are like that and just talk to them and say, hey, what's going on here? And usually you can get a pretty good gist of what's going on inside the schools by doing that. But I think that we could do a better job as far as student body representations and stuff like that. I think the survey is one thing, but the percentage of it being so small, doesn't really give us the numbers that we truly could see if we wanted to try to make change. And the other thing is that the survey is a one-time-a-year type thing. sometimes when we're moving through things, like when we were doing the Guardian program, I polled some of our dual enrollment students that were over at Eastern Florida State, and I was talking to them about it. It gives you an opportunity to kind of move through and get those real-time opinions. That's all. Just wanted to kind of point that out. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Susan. And Mr. Trent, you were ready to go too.
Yeah, I'll just follow up, and then, I mean, this kind of data is what it is. I appreciate the staff's comments. I mean, that's always valid. I do agree with Ms. Wright with asking the elementary school kids. I mean, there again, it is what it is. When you look at the very first question, when your teacher wants you to work your hardest, is the highest question and value, and does your teacher want you to work your best, do your best, is the lowest, which right there should pretty much take away the comments there forward, because obviously the elementary school kids, they're just answering. Let's be honest on that. And even the second one where, does the work of your class make you really think, is the highest rated question. Does what you learn in school help you in your life, is the lowest. Well, I hope so, because they don't know what they don't know. What is a day in an elementary school's kid's life? What videos to go on, what to watch, how to ride their bike and where they're going. So I hope we're not making major decisions at any of the schools based on this limited data. I know it's not coming from here, but as they get older, I think hearing from them is important. It's interesting, and that's, I mean, the data is the numbers are going down on participation, but I still think it's enough to get a snapshot of where these students are getting that information. But again, if we didn't have this from our elementary school kids, students, I think would be just as well, and we could take that time and maybe from this data have the teachers get to know the students a little bit more, and get on the curriculum rather than putting this in front of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old kids. But that's my 2 cents. But thank you for all the data collection and putting it together. That's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of slides that you had to present and put together. So thank you for doing your work, and I know it's going to be good as a whole and as principals they're going to use at the high school level, middle school level. There's some very important information here. But that's it.
All right, so thank you guys for all the hard work that you put in on this.
I have a
obviously.
follow-up.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, yes, of course, I do. Because it's really important, because when we as board members talk about our opinions, we need to remember that our opinions don't always have to, or are not valid enough to be the deciding factor for the entire decisions that are made for a district. So when we talk about parental rights, that's parental rights for every single parent. Yes, you have the right to say no for your child. Having a conversation about why we shouldn't survey the elementary students. First of all, it's 5th and 6th graders. They're not 9 and 8 years old. Remember, the lowest rated question doesn't mean it's a negative response. It just means it was the lowest. So that doesn't mean it's necessarily contradictory to one another, being highest and lowest. And just alone, 5,260 elementary school families wanted their children surveyed. So the one opinion up here, or the 2 opinions up here, that we shouldn't survey elementary students, like, remember, this is representative of the district. Those families wanted it, and those are the ones who were aware of it and opted in for it. It doesn't mean that the ones who didn't necessarily didn't want their kids surveyed. They may not have known about it. They may not have responded. They may not have been reached out to enough times. So I think any and all information that our schools can have, when parents are willing to give that permission, go for it. Let's do it. And I think it's important to remember too, when we are talking about elementary kids, and if there is a contradictory response, that's really important information for classroom teachers to kind of take a step back as adults and realize what that perspective is. Do you think your teacher wants you to work your hardest? And they say, yes, I do. I think they expect me to work hard every day. Does your teacher want you to do your best? And maybe that's a little lower. And as an adult, I would look at that working with little kids and think, am I encouraging this student to the best of their ability, or am I holding them to this highest possible standard that may be too high for them? And their perception might be, you're not asking me to do my personal best. You're asking me to work really hard. And that's just it's just really enlightening for classroom teachers to kind of get a reset and a focus for the new year of how to maybe approach their little ones a little bit differently.
All right, thank you, Ms. Jenkins. All right, so we are, at this point, have gone through everything that's on our agenda. There was one email that went out, Mr. Gibbs had sent out in regards to the policy updates. I think was 123 left that we need to process through.
Yeah, there's 123 policies from the board's review of the policy book, and then we're going to have any additional policies from the legislative session that we have to update.
Okay,
So-
and board, did you guys have a chance to weigh in and respond to Mr. Gibbs so that we can start working on those and get those knocked out? That's been something we've been working on for almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
I feel like
My question would be, because I know you'd sent us yesterday like a timeline about the special meetings, but considering the one the meetings that are going to be the longest, I know we've already taken a look at these, but some of them it's been over a year
Right.
since we looked at them. The meeting that's going to be the longest is the work session type meeting where there's laws changed that are going to be addition to the things we already talked about last year. We've got new cabinet members in place in some of these areas that weren't in place when we were reviewing the policies in the earlier spring of last year. I think that meeting, for that, I don't know that we can do 123 or more in a work session.
No.
So I think that's where, I mean, when we get to is there anybody here? Is there anybody here? I mean, those can be, those
well-
probably won't be long or controversial, except for just the amount that takes the chair to read through the script. But I would like a little more time in the meetings, unless we schedule like a big, long day, because that's a lot of policies for us to work session on.
Or the other recommendation that I had made was possibly breaking this into 3 or 4 and hitting them that way, because it's going to be a lot all at one time.
Yeah. If there's deadline, like the ones with the statutory updates, rather than like the little tiny references changes that we made or whatever, if we can I know that's a lot of work, but if we can prioritize, obviously we need to hit those first that are statutory changes. I mean, do you kind of have it, you know what I mean? Because some of the changes we made were so small, it's really not going to affect the daily function of the district.
We can take a look at it. 3 or 4
But then again,
meetings.
those will be faster to move through.
Right, if we're splitting it into 3 or 4, that's 3 or 4 separate processes, so that's going to be 3 or 4, timelines for each of those, which will probably push us beyond January.
Okay. So could we, I mean, the day that you're going to bring the bulk of these to us, we need to just plan on having, that's the only thing that happens on that work session, and we're here for a good amount of the day. And we all do our homework really well before we get here, so it can shorten that.
I just want to
session.
make you guys cognizant of the fact that if you do separate these and push this out, you're going to have potentially 2 new board
Right.
members sitting up here. So if you do that, then delay it a little bit, because they're going to need a minute. So like push it at least till December for some of those. Like getting them in November and asking them to do this the next week is just
Yeah.
unfair.
No, it's not fair.
So just be careful.
So my what I would prefer to do because of that, honestly, the potential new board members that are going to come on, I think we should schedule these alone just for workshops that are going to come up and try to move through these as soon as possible. Could we do them in 2 settings? Can we compromise and maybe meet in the middle and do 2 settings instead of 1 setting, since it's going to be
Then
a
could we
lot?
do the public hearing still all together?
Yeah, I mean, we
Yes.
can split the work session part up, assuming staff get them done on time. That'll move their timeline up. But if we get them in, we can bring them to work session, no problem. And then have the public hearings where there's 123 or
Those
140
October
or whatever.
dates that you gave? I think.
And
yeah.
we're all going to take turns saying, does anybody want to speak to this policy? We're
No,
gonna
Madam Chair,
rotate
that's your
this thing down the
responsibility.
line because it gets
Hang on to
very
the gavel.
blah. All right, so can we come up with a consensus on where we're okay with moving forward, doing these in
2?
2 settings?
You mean workshops?
Workshops, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, just the ones for board review, so.
For clarification purpose, sorry, I've been skimming while we're sitting here, so, and it's hard for me to read and pay attention at the same time. for clarification purposes, these are all ones we've already gone over before, but there's been a couple of statutory changes.
We've got the Neola update recently, so there's possibility that there's going to be some
Like tiny
re-updates
Okay.
coming back to the board
Okay,
in
just
addition
making
to the ones you've already reviewed, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so back to the question, are we okay with 2? All right, and can we start it as soon as maybe September?
If we do break it in two, that does leave a little more wiggle room in the work sessions in case the superintendent and staff need to bring us something else
Right.
urgent, because we can't just do these for the rest of the year, of the,
No, I know.
so.
Okay, all right, so do we have clear direction on moving forward with policies? Paul, I think you're good?
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other further business to discuss? Dr. Rendell? None? All right, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. All right, board, we're in.